And we're live. Welcome into Flyover Footy. We had some minor technical issues, which brought us about 5 minutes late, but we figured that out. I blame the fact that I was late arriving from the kick or treat event at the zoo, but we're here. Phil, Stu, you guys with me?
We're here.
Yep.
Hi, everybody.
Exciting times, right, boys? We got one match left.
So soon?
I'm distracted because my kids are getting yelled at right now. Sorry. Can you guys hear that?
I was wondering if that was you or Stu, and I was like, oh man, somebody's in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, just toddler life over here. She's very much in the Y phase. So we've got about 15, 20 minutes of Y, it seems like, every night. But
Stalling. Like, for some reason, they only think of these millions of questions right before bed.
No, she thinks of them all the time.
Oh, okay, good.
But she asked why we had a ceiling on the car today. And I was like,
why do you have a ceiling on the car?
Because I don't have enough money for a convertible.
And that's a can of worms you don't want to open up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about economics.
Please.
Yeah.
Well, we got a meaty show, at least, to distract us from the questions of toddlers and all other topics of life. But there's a pretty meaty show. We've got quite a bit of news. We might have more news tonight to talk about than we've had in quite some time. And maybe I'm using the term news loosely, but it's more like pertinent discussion topics in the fan base or related to players. Because there's not like I don't feel like there's a host of breaking news necessarily or firm things to really dive into, but there's like some interesting topics that have been bubbling up in the fan base this week.
You say that, but since we're recording on Wednesday, this is Wednesday, so tomorrow morning, Diego's going to announce the new sporting director.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine? We always joke that Thursday is like a perfect day because so much stuff seems to happen on Thursday. I don't know why, but
it's true.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to announce on a Friday unless you're do a breaking soft news on a Friday evening to just
Friday is the day to drop bad news.
Yeah.
Like I remember Friday was the day that they announced MLS was pulling out of the U.S. Open Cup. That's the thing that's seared in my mind as that was a Friday news dump.
Yeah, and hopefully announcing the sporting director will not be bad news. And it would be an even worse sign if they're anticipating it as bad news.
Yeah, I think we're safe on that front. I truly think we're safe on that front. But we do have I believe we have somewhat of a timeline now to at least talk through. So
that's right.
Phil, whenever you're ready to get rolling, I think I am too.
Okay, here we go. Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. It is decision day week in MLS, not necessarily for St. Louis, but we do have a nice lineup of news to talk about other than that because it isn't a big news story for us personally. And to help me do that, we have Matt Baker and Stu Holtgren. Matt, how's it going?
Pretty good, Phil. Pretty good. I'm coming off of the kick or treat event at the zoo. We're recording this a little earlier in the week because of all the schedule and weirdness that we have going on. But I'm riding high off that. It was a great family event. Got to see a lot of listeners, a lot of friends, a lot of listeners who've become friends, and so it was an awesome experience. Thank you to everyone who came there, showed their support for City, and who said hi because there's nothing I love more than seeing people who listen to our show who will devote their time to us, and that just fills me with the warm and fuzzies. So I appreciate that. So I'm riding that high right now as we look into not just this City RSL match, but CITY2 playoffs and plenty of other ancillary stuff to talk about.
Very nice. Stu is here to join us as well. How's it going, Stu? What's new with you, man?
Doing pretty well. International breaks wrapping up. I got to watch a little bit, follow a bit of that over this break, so that was nice. It's always fun to get excited about the World Cup.
Indeed. Yeah. I mean, that news is heating up here and there. And we've got a win to kind of be high off of. That's exciting. And a lot of excitement to kind of see one of the better tests we've had since there's been improvement. And I'm really excited about that, especially coming up this week. So we're going to dig into that. Eventually, we're going to dig into the Real Salt Lake matchup, get you guys prepared for that. But of course, we've got some fun topics to talk about here. The sporting director timeline heats up is what you wrote here, Matt. And I completely agree. That is so, it's honestly, it's a bit of a relief to me to kind of have some news there.
It kind of is. I've been saying for weeks, maybe even back to when Diego was talking about as soon as Lutz was let go, that the timeline at best case scenario, we would announce a sporting director as soon as the season ended. I think he told us it would be after the season. And so that was our level set timeline. So Justin Horniker, our friend Justin Horniker, has reported that City expects to name their sporting director by the end of the month. Now, the end of the month is a couple of weeks after the season ends, but there are some things that have occurred, things that we've heard that kind of lends us to believe that it might be as soon as next week. I followed up Justin's reporting by saying that as far as we know, City is not planning on holding their end of season media availability where you get to kind of post-mortem with the head coach, post-mortem with the players before they all leave for their winter holiday. They're not doing that next week. It sounds like they're postponing that by at least a week. And add to it that Marcel Hartl on Tuesday of this week said that he isn't leaving after the final match. They have training. The club has training the week after the RSL match. So that's interesting in and of itself. I will add the caveat after talking with a few folks that it potentially could be not abnormal for the club to have a training or a practice one or two after the last game before folks leave. It's kind of a deload.
Oh no, we lost Matt.
Oh no.
How wild. We lost you, Matt.
That was bizarre. I'm even hardwired in here. I will pick up and I'll make myself the editor after this one.
Oh, I bailed out today.
Yeah. Let me get back into the mindset.
I think the last words you were saying was deload.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not abnormal necessarily for the players to potentially stick around as they might have to deload or go from, game time training to the off season. So you might not want to go from 100 to 0, the opposite of 0 to 60. But there is some things that are starting to add up here. So this mandatory training the week after, keeping some of the international players in, it's abnormal from last year. Last year, for instance, you had the players be informed of all of their options, all of the next steps before they left for winter holiday. And it was immediate. I think it was like the next couple of business days that we had that end of season presser. This year is very different. And so piecing together some of these things where Justin says City expects to name their sporting director by the end of October, and then having the media availability pushed a week. Marcel Hartl saying there's intentional training the week after. A lot of options, such as a new sporting director could be already here, could be signing paperwork now, could be about to sign paperwork. And then this is an opportunity for that sporting director to see the players in person, to see David Critchley run a practice, run training in person, and have those conversations before all the players leave for their holiday, whether or not the option discussion is going to occur in the next week or so, because they have until November 26th to pick up player options, whether or not David Critchley or whoever would be hired as head coach. That doesn't have to happen now, but this is an opportunity right after the season, if they're going to name a sporting director soon, for that sporting director to come in and see everything firsthand.
Stu, how did this news strike you? I imagine some relief for you as well.
I mean, do we think that the news lends itself to an external hire or an internal hire? If they're
I think it lends itself to an external hire.
Okay.
And I agreed with a few folks that if this is in fact the case, why would John Hackworth need that extra time to evaluate players or to talk to players or to view David Critchley as head coach in a training environment? I think if there's smoke to this fire and these puzzle pieces being the breadcrumbs here that we're trying to track, then I think that would lend itself to an external hire.
That's good detective work there, Matt. I like that. And good question, Stu. Anything else you want to say about that? We've got a few more details to talk about in the same topic.
Yeah, I think we'll get into it in a little bit later, but I think the season's still going on, so any roster moves or roster changes should all be taken with kind of a heaping of salt before we get to that point, which I think is something you were leading into next on that, Matt.
Yeah, Klaus' comments to Territorio MLS was interesting, and it struck me personally. It got me asking a million questions, and then in our DMs, we all calmed me down quite a bit with some education. Actually, is how I would put that. But Matt, can you? I don't know, lead us into this conversation here.
Oh, that was an interesting chat in our DMs about what other people have been saying, what the initial knee-jerk reaction was to this. But if you didn't see it, if you didn't hear about it, Klaus gave an interview in Spanish, if my languages are correct, because I was watching the translations more so than I was listening to it. He gave an interview in Spanish to Territorio MLS. It's an account on X or Twitter. Regarding a myriad of topics. Just a lot of things were covered in this. If you're a fan of Klaus, go check out Territorio MLS on X and Twitter and look for that interview because it's posted on their YouTube. It's a good one, but it was a translated interview. The question that has got a lot of fans up in arms appears to have been the host making note of the club having an option, and the question to Klaus framed in more of, is there a mutual desire to stay here and with the club? That was how the question was framed to Klaus, as I understand it from the translation. And after Klaus noted that he's super ingrained in St. Louis, he did note that it's kind of a one-sided decision from the club. He noted that he hasn't heard anything from the club. Klaus said that he's waiting to find out next steps, noted he's not a part of the decision making, and he's kind of waiting anxiously for those next steps. Now, the thing about this is that his answer, at least the translated clip that was played, appears to have been taken by some St. Louis City fans as the club has not said anything to Klaus. They have not discussed anything with Klaus, and that's a problem because it's Klaus, because there's something owed to Klaus, or there should be something owed to Klaus because of his tenure with the club, what he means to the organization, how much he's gone all in for St. Louis, and how much he's beloved by the fan base. None of those things are wrong. But what I think is wrong is the expectation that you would have to create some criteria to separate a player or players from other players in the same scenario. I think it would be a slap in the face to a lot of other players who currently have their options up right now, have their contracts up and are going on to an option year, to say Klaus found out now, but nobody else gets to find out until the end of the season. The truth of the matter is players don't find out that if the club has exercised their option until the end of the season. This is par for the course, and it's Klaus here that we're talking about, so it makes it a little more close to the heart. But this whole thing is a big nothing burger to me. There is absolutely nothing to me that should have been newsworthy, that should have been anger inducing, or that should have even been batted an eye at, because what Klaus is saying is just the fact of the matter. Now, I do feel for Klaus and all the players in this scenario, especially an international player like Klaus, who doesn't have his green card. He's going home across the sea for his winter holiday. Like, he's not staying here for winter holiday, just like a lot of other players. And so they want to know where they're going to be next year. They want to know where their life is going to take them as soon as possible. So obviously there's frustration in the process, but that's how it is in MLS with these club options that exist. It's the club, like Klaus even said, which again, if you watch the interview, he said everything that we knew and expected about this, that it's the club making the decision. He's just anxiously waiting those next steps. So I was kind of floored for a bit to see ire being shown towards the club as if they are doing something wrong in this entire process, just because Klaus is saying what happens to a player when your contract is up and you have a club option for the next year.
Stu, do you have some de-escalating you can help us out with on this one?
Yeah, I mean, just like Matt said, these are options that are picked up. It's not uncommon in sports in general that you talk about, we'll discuss, negotiate after the end of the season. There are a lot of players outside of Klaus who, like Kessler, Berkey, who negotiations will be happening, ramping up after the season ends. So I wouldn't be too concerned about if Klaus is going or staying until, obviously if we get past that deadline day in late November. But I expect we'll hear something, the week after the season ends.
Yeah, and I think something that I was getting caught up on too before you guys helped me kind of think it through properly. again, like a total knee jerk reaction from me initially was, well, like, don't we have things to figure out? Is he worth the money? You know, what can we do with the money after that? And Santi made it really easy. He's like, there's no negotiating to do. Like, it's an option. So it's like a yes or a no. And like you said, Matt, it's just standard procedure. Play through the season, and then you let them know. And it'll be an extra week, it sounds like. So that sucks too. That's fair to be upset about that. But, you know, I think the way to avoid this is if you're a player and you have a good agent and you don't like the situation, you just make sure there's not a club option. Otherwise, you know, it seems pretty typical, and it's just like a common frustration that all players probably feel from time to time, just like all of us do with work and life and things like that. But it's super common, and it's not something to get worked up about yet. So de-escalating here at Flyover Footy, I think that's one of the things we're good at, and we're pushing it on this one for sure. And there's some more de-escalating to do, and perhaps in a way. Conrad Vollum, Tom Timmerman put out a story in the Post-Dispatch about him giving us all the information, super helpful. And we're going to go over that now. Matt, why don't you lead us into that?
Well, and this actually, coming off the heels of the Klaus conversation, is quite informative to the specific scenario that St. Louis finds themselves in. So Conrad Vollum's loan from Slavia Prague ends at the end of this calendar year. We know that. But Vollum himself told Tom Timmerman that he has no idea if City will pick up that option. So again, Conrad Vollum in the same boat that Klaus is in, because we're still in season. Like they haven't made these decisions, but Conrad Vollum goes a little bit further in what his comments were, also saying, quote, "You should ask the sporting director." Goes on to say, quote, "The one we don't have." Conrad Vollum says
that sums it up so well, right? Like all the players must be thinking this.
You could stop right there and say that's the answer to all of this. Like if you say the club should let Klaus know early on, who's going to let him know?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to put this on Diego now? Because you're going to ask Diego to make sporting decisions. Nobody wants that. Like that shouldn't be, none of this makes sense to say the club should be doing something about these options right now because of the situation that we're in. Now you could be upset that we're in this situation and that's valid, but the fact is we're here. And so now we have to pick up the pieces and navigate these waters. Conrad Vollum also goes on to say, I don't know, I've talked to them, but it's hard for them to make a final decision when they don't have a sporting director. But for me, we'll see. I know I'm not going back to my former club. And here's where it gets interesting, guys. Vollum says, if I'm not getting bought here, I will have other options, other places. So it depends. The ball is in their hands. I've told them that I'm open to stay. I'm enjoying life here. Family's enjoying it. And I have a good place in the group and the team, have a good end of the season now. So I've told them that I'm open for it. I think it could be, I think it could be really good for next year, the next years with their plan. But as I said, it's in their hands. I think that's with a lot of other players as well. So Conrad Vollum, just like Devin Padelford had told me earlier, open to staying if that's in the club's plans. But the fact of the matter is, Vollum, Klaus, none of these players are going to know, and we shouldn't expect them to know until a sporting director is in place. And that goes back to our first topic of why it's so important to have a sporting director in place as soon as the season ends. That would do so much to be able to help understand and make timely decisions with as being as informed as possible before this November 26th deadline.
Yeah, speedier the better. Stu, you want to wrap up this conversation about Vollum? I think in the wind down, we're going to kind of dig deeper about all of this stuff, about who we would want to keep and how. But any general thoughts about this article that came out from Tom?
Well, I mean, in that quote, something interesting is, is there a laid out plan that they're discussing when he says next year's plan or the next years with their plan? Is he referring to something specifically, or is he just kind of talking off the cuff there? I don't know. I mean, I would assume that there's some sort of blueprint roadmap prior to Lutz leaving, but of course, new sporting director is going to meet with the technical director and the rest of the front office and coaching staff and kind of plan out the roadmap going forward, I'd assume.
Yeah, and we'll dive into Conrad Vollum a little more in the wind down, because him in particular, there are some nuances in play to that extent of the next years that may be impacting the decision to exercise the purchase option or do some other external negotiation if you let that loan expire.
Yep, I'm excited to talk about that. One last piece of news, and then we will do a station break and talk about St. Louis City a little bit as they get ready to face Real Salt Lake. So, Matt, take it away with the last little piece of news here.
Yeah, this one's really quick. The City Sprint 5Ks on Sunday at 9. We will have a special fallout that recaps the RSL match after that. And that's kind of it. So don't be looking for a fallout at 8 a.m. because Santi and I will be downtown running a 5K at 9 a.m. So hopefully we see a lot of folks out there, and we'll have a fallout coming to you after that.
Thank you for joining us here on the Big 550 KTRS. We are Flyover Footy, and if you missed it, we just talked about the sporting director news, Klaus and Conrad Vollum with St. Louis City, and what their futures hold, and how we just really need that sporting director information to be decided so we can all kind of move on with our lives. I'm sure the players talked about how the players are feeling about that. But now we're going to leave all that behind us as we talk a little bit about some good news. Some of the best news of the season has been coming from CITY2 and their amazing run, about to be a playoff run, we hope. So Matt, there's interesting news on that front, isn't there?
Oh, we've got a whole preview here for CITY2 on this show. CITY2 has finished their season. We know their first round playoff opponent, Ventura County FC. They finished the season with the best record in MLS Next Pro. So they were able to pick their own opponent. They have chosen their own destiny, as MLS Next Pro rules in the playoffs have a pick your own opponent from the first, second, and third seeds in the playoffs. So CITY2 finished the regular season with 62 points in 28 games. That's a 2.21 points per game average for those keeping track and trying to compare it to what City has done. CITY2, like I said, play Ventura County, formerly known as LA Galaxy 2, at 6 p.m. on Sunday at Energizer Park. Look at Ventura County a little bit. Ventura County comes into this one having just squeaked in 8th place, tied with Austin FC 2, 41 points in 28 games. That's a 1.46 points per game. But they also came into this one kind of in really decent form, I would say. They were up and down as the season progressed. The City might have chosen form over direct head-to-head in this one, because Ventura County, their last game, if we go back, was a 2-0 loss against Rapids 2, a 2-1 win against Sporting KC 2, a 4-0 loss to the Town FC, that's the Earthquakes, San Jose Earthquakes 2 team, a 2-1 loss to the Real Monarchs, and a penalty shootout loss against North Texas to round out their September. So not the greatest of form, but you go back to head-to-head, and back in April of this year, Ventura County defeated St. Louis City 2 3-1, but that was in California. You go to the St. Louis side of this, and it was a 1-1 draw with St. Louis winning on PKs back in July. So this isn't the team that was just bombarded by St. Louis City 2 during the regular season. It's a team that I think is going into pretty poor form. They could have had Vancouver Whitecaps 2. That was an option on the board, so we'll have to see how that pays off. Looking at Ventura County, they're more of a, I would say, high-pressing team, more exciting team than you might think of from the LA Galaxy. Not as much of a possession-heavy team, but they look to run. And they do leverage the youth on their team to do a lot of that. So they're a higher pressing team. Look for them to try to disrupt us on our back line. Only 2 of Ventura County's top 11 players, though, in terms of minutes played, are signed to the Galaxy supplemental roster. So they're playing a lot of Ventura County or Galaxy 2 direct players. Those 2 players are 24-year-old midfielder Christopher Rindov and defender Harbor Miller. Harbor Miller, you might remember that name, as he's a well-known 18-year-old defender now who made his Galaxy debut as a 17-year-old back in March, becoming the 4th youngest player in Galaxy history to make his MLS debut. So that's a name to watch, Harbor Miller. Some of the leading goal scorers for Ventura County to keep an eye on are Giorgio Kochevsky, 23-year-old midfielder signed directly to Ventura, and Luis Muller, 24-year-old forward. Both of them have 7 goals. Remember that Ventura County's leading goal scorers have 7 goals. CITY2 coming into this, I mean, I could go through their form, but they ran 18 straight unbeaten prior to that final match that they played. So this team has been cruising and clicking quite well. And for CITY2, they've relied heavily on Makai Joyner, Miguel Perez, and Brendan McSorley to score their goals. I mentioned Ventura County's 2 leading goal scorers had 7 goals each. Well, Makai Joyner has 15. He came in, I think, 3rd in the Golden Boot race. Miguel Perez had 10 goals this season, and Brendan McSorley had 8, despite his minutes falling off there towards the end of the season because he was seeing more time with City. All of them have more goals than Ventura County's top guys. Minutes-wise, who we expect to see, who we've seen and we expect to see heavy minutes from, it's midfielder Cam Silly, defender Gabby McKenna, midfielder Miguel Perez, midfielder Seth Antwi, fullback Tyson Pierce, forward Emil Yaskalainen, and forward Brendan McSorley, all with over 1,900 minutes and at least 23 matches started with 24 played out of a total of 28 games. These guys have carried CITY2 by and large. So what I want to do is kind of do a quick projected lineup for City 2 to let you know kind of who we think might actually be starting in this playoff match, and what are some of the contingencies that are going on with City 2 to keep in mind. I think based on previous matches as they ended this season, we're going to see Christian Oliveras in goal. I think the back line might look like Cam Silly, Jaziel Orozco, Gabby McKenna, and Tyson Pierce. Tyson Pierce himself just returning this week from the Stu, correct me if I'm wrong, U17 camp, I believe it was. Center mids in this match, I expect to see potentially Akil Watts and Miguel Perez. Attacking mids, I would expect maybe Jay Reed, Caden Glover, and Juan Kuzain, with Brendan McSorley starting at striker. Now, some of the nuances that I mentioned, Cam Silly's only not started recently due to a red card suspension, so Silly is like a lock for me.
Yeah.
Seth Antwi, Mateo Kidd, those are some other big options that could shift Jay Reed or Juan Kuzain around. But the big thing for City up front is that Emil Jaskalainen is suspended for this match due to red card picked up at the final regular season match against Timbers 2. That's why I have Brendan McSorley in this one up top. Caden Glover could be an option, but if Glover doesn't go at the very top, I think Brendan McSorley is that option. Jaskalainen's not going to be there, though. The last 3 games so far have seen Akil Watts get starts, and he's barely qualified for the playoff roster with having 4 appearances. And that's what's required for MLS Next Pro is you have to have 4 appearances in the regular season in order to be eligible for the playoffs. Akil Watts is like snuck in there by and large. So I expect him to start as well. Brendan McSorley hasn't been playing a whole lot of City 2 minutes lately because he's seen increased workload with City, like I said. But with Jaskalainen out, I think he's going to be needed more, and that's why I have him in my starting 11. So if it's not these 11 guys, look for Seth Antwi or Mateo Kidd to get a nod here or there. But if not, those are 2 guys off the bench who are going to be big impact players. And some of them do have impacts with City. So we'll talk about it in a little bit, but watch out for guys like Brendan McSorley. Watch out for Seth Antwi, mainly as will they get minutes for City on Saturday, and how will that impact their availability for Sunday?
Yeah, and to add on to that, Glover had a start at the striker position about 4 or 5 games ago against Houston Dynamo 2. So he is a decent shot for striker as well. If McSorley puts in too many minutes with the senior team, Glover's done it recently and could definitely, he got a goal in that game. So you never know. Might as well, right?
The last thing, I didn't mention Makai Joyner. Makai Joyner will play for City 2. I am almost sure of that, but I don't think he'll start. I think Makai Joyner might see time with City on Saturday. He himself getting back from the U20s this week, but Makai Joyner is a PK phenom. He leads MLS Next Pro in PKs attempted and converted. So they will have some extra time, I believe, as part of the playoff rules, but they could go to PKs again. And if you go to PKs, you have to have Makai Joyner on the field. If you have Makai Joyner on the field after potentially 120 minutes of total game time, you can't start him. Otherwise, the only reason you could start him is to not play him at all for City on Saturday. And I think that would be a little unfortunate to not see Makai Joyner at all in MLS to finish out the season. So I don't have Makai Joyner in my starting 11 because I expect him to finish the game and play for City on Saturday as well.
Yep. And if you haven't been to a City 2 game, watch out for homegrowns Tyson Pierce, who is about to get more minutes with USMNT, or youth national team. Miggy Perez is a homegrown player. He has 10 goals. He took the PK the other day when Joyner wasn't in the game. That was interesting. Am I missing anyone? And then Caden Glover, of course, and then Brendan McSorley, Jaziel Orozco, and of course, who's the 6th that's been getting minutes? I mess up his name.
Jay Reed.
No,
Reed's been getting minutes, but Gabby McKenna?
No, sorry, that play with the main team.
You've got
Seth Antwi.
Yeah, Akil Watts.
Those are all players who have played with the senior team. So like you get to see our future as well, like possible people that will stand out, players that need to fill minutes in the near future. Yep. You get to see them play in a high stakes environment. That's awesome. So let's move on. We're running out of time, everybody. So let's move straight through to.
This is why we're going to have a wind down on the pod if you're listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS.
Well, let's look at the City versus RSL. We'll look at City first from bird's eye view here.
Yeah, so City's 1-3-1 all time against RSL. 1 win, 3 losses, and a draw, with the most recent actually being a Critchley coached match. But that Critchley coached match back on July 5th, a 3-2 loss, was not the same City team we're going to see this Saturday, for sure. They had a back line at the time of JGR, Josh Yarrow at center back, with Jaziel Orozco at right back. Thomas Totland was playing left back. Hartle was more of a deeper central mid, and up top we had Toyshirt, Klaus, and Betcher. not the same lineup we're going to see by and large. But St. Louis City does come into this in pretty good form. We're up to 12th in the West. We've now officially cemented our finishing higher than Sporting KC. So that's something to hang your hats on. We will not have the wooden spoon this season. All good things. 8-18-7 record, 31 points in 33 matches. So we're looking to have a 1.0 points per game for the entire season as our best possible finish. 42 goals scored, 56 goals allowed. That's minus 14. That's not great overall for the season. We are 4-7-5 at home. But here's some things that matter more closely to this game. We're 6-10-2 under David Critchley. Okay. The last 4 MLS matches, a 3-1 win against Austin at Austin, a 3-0 loss at home against LAFC, and a 3-1 win at San Jose, a 2-0 win at CF Montreal. So in our last 5 games, we have gotten 10 points out of a possible 15. Pretty good form. David Critchley, though, this is a fascinating couple of stats I've got here for you. Critchley has City winning 3 straight away games for the first time since opening their 2023 season, but City has not won a home game since August 9th against Nashville. We've had 1 draw and 2 losses since then. So here's some dynamics of how City plays under David Critchley and what our records are. In games where City has allowed, and David Critchley, again, 18 games that he's coached. In games where City has allowed 2 or more goals, City has 9 losses and a draw with 0 wins. If City has allowed 2 or more goals. In games where City has allowed 1 or fewer goals, we're 6-1-1. Okay. That might seem a little obvious, but the other side of this is that games where City have scored 2 or more, we're 6-5-1. In games where City has scored 1 or fewer, we're 0-5-1. So we really only win. We're not a team under David Critchley that wins 1-0. That's basically the point of this. We're not a team under David Critchley that wins 2-1. We're a team under David Critchley that wins 3-1. We're a team under David Critchley that wins 3-0. But if we allow teams to have 2 or more goals, we don't have the firepower to overcome that. That's what the point of these few stats are. Allowing 2 or more goals, 0-9-1, scoring 2 or more, 6-5-1. So this game to me is either St. Louis is going to need to score a bucket of goals as they have historically under Critchley, or they're going to need to keep whatever we do offensively. We cannot allow more than 1 goal scored. The good news for this is everyone seems to be healthy. Everyone was in training this week who was eligible to play, including guys like Henry Kessler, Edu Leuven, and so on. Seth Antwi and Haziel Orozco were with City 2 on Tuesday, and more are expected to shift over there by the end of the week. So looking at Akil Watts, maybe Brendan McSorley, who knows, but more include, I would expect Akil Watts to be shifting over. Cedric Twyshert and Rasmus Alm, a couple names that it's nice to hear about. They were around training in gear, doing various activities. So they're still a part of the team. They're still milling about. But as far as everyone who's eligible to play, who we expect to be, available for selection, clean bill of health so far for City. And that's the best we could hope for going into this last game, because the biggest storyline for City is not decision day making the playoffs. It's decision day on our head coach. This is the final chance for David Critchley. Through 18 games, as a reminder for David Critchley, he's taken there. Yeah, I like that. Through 18 games as head coach, Critchley has taken 20 points, 1.11 points per game. But in the last handful, if you start to draw back to the present, in the last 12 games, he's up to a 1.33 points per game with 16 points. In the last 9 games, he's up to a 1.44 points per game with 13 points. And in the last 5, like I said, 10 points in his last 5 is good for a 2 points per game. So all of that, knowing what Critchley has said about to us and to others about where the state of City was when he took over and how he's able to turn them around, this is the final go. Santi and I are pretty clear on our opinions, and I'll speak for him on this. I don't speak for him often, but I will speak for him on this, that our feelings are if David Critchley is able to pull out the win against RSL, he will be named the official St. Louis City head coach.
Stu, a lot of good stuff there. Anything you'd like to add about City's form or how Critchley's been doing, or, the ways they're able to win or lose a game?
Oh, it's tough because we've gone back and forth on this privately about, does this team, if Critchley is head coach from the beginning, make the playoffs? And Matt is pretty confident that answer is a yes. And I'm coming around to that point also because of how low the threshold is this year in the Western Conference for that playoff spot. Yeah, I mean, it's impossible not to see the progression in the last 5 matches. We got 10 points, other than that LAFC game, which honestly, no one was surprised by that result.
No.
Um, it's been a good showing. That FC Dallas game was, quite frankly, awful. But otherwise, it's been improvement match over match. So if he does show more spark, and we do show continued improvement against RSL, a team that is going to be absolutely desperate to win this game, I think that's a good sign to give him a shot next year.
I love listening to his city voice with Critchley, with Pete Wood. It was nice to hear him say, like, the first thing he wanted to do was score goals, and then eventually he worked harder and harder and harder on defense. And I think what he's worked on has absolutely shown on the field, and I think that's encouraging. No matter how you feel about Critchley, if you line up all the things he talked about in voice with what's happened on the field, it feels like he's making a difference. So I liked that part of it, and it was cool to be able to tie those together. Matt, let's jump into Real Salt Lake. Let's talk about them before we close out here.
Yeah, Real Salt Lake comes into this with a lot more on the line than St. Louis as far as decision day goes. They are 9th in the West, hanging on by a thread to that final playoff spot. They have a 12-17-4 record coming into this, 40 points in 33 matches, 36 goals scored and 47 goals allowed. So they don't have much of a better goal differential than us at -11. They are 3-10-3 away. So this is not a good away team, and I've got more on that in a moment. Their last 3 matches, a 1-0 loss at Seattle, a 1-0 win against Colorado, and a 3-1 win against Austin FC. But Real Salt Lake have not won a road game since July 16th at Portland, 1-0. They are 1-7-3 in their last 11 away. In their last 5 games, they've scored more than 1 goal only once at home against Austin. So that's important. So remember what we talked about earlier about St. Louis City and how successful they are when they limit teams to 1 goal or less. Well, in their last 5 games, Real Salt Lake have scored more than 1 goal only once, and that was a home game. Last week, they didn't have Diego Luna on international duty. We all know Diego Luna probably by now. He's the spark plug of their team. He's their connector. He's the do everything guy. But Luna's missed 4 portions of matches this season due to U.S. national team call-ups. In the first game back, this will be his 4th. In the first game back of those missed stretches, Real Salt Lake is 1-2 in matches immediately following his call-ups. They've lost 2-0. They've lost 1-0. And then here most recently, that did have a 2-1 win against SKC at home. Generally poor, and if SKC is their only win, I think that's a tip to our cap. But especially if you keep Luna off the score sheet, because Luna scored, or he had a goal contribution in against SKC. So if you keep Luna away from goal, if you don't allow him to be a goal contributor, it seems like, especially coming back off these international breaks, low sample size, very, very small sample size, but in general, you keep him away from dangerous areas, you limit his opportunity to connect the ball, good things are going to happen. Mostly RSL was healthy as of last week. Matthew Bell out with a hamstring last week. Javier Brown out with a knee injury. Zach McMath, their goalkeeper, I think he was out for the season with a shoulder injury for a while. And Victor Olatunji out questionable with a groin last week. But it all comes down to Real Salt Lake's playoff opportunities here. And so to know what they have at stake, Real Salt Lake will clinch a berth in the playoffs if they just win outright, or if they draw against St. Louis and Colorado loses or draws against LAFC, basically holding their spot there at the 9th spot. Real Salt Lake can draw against St. Louis and Dallas can lose at Vancouver, or San Jose can lose or draw against Austin and Colorado loses against LAFC. They need to at least hold their spot, or they need 1 point and a couple things to fall to make that 9th spot. Or if they win outright, they get the spot. And that's where RSL is coming into this. They've got a lot to play, and so they're going to be fiery. Pablo Mastroeni's team is going to be exactly what they've been all season now that they have Diego Luna back. They're going to be a bit of a possession team. They're going to have structure in the middle third, but they're going to be disciplined defensively, and they're going to create transition moments. They want to control the tempo through the midfield. They're probably going to run out with a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. But when they build out, their fullbacks do push slightly higher. So not unlike what City does. They have 2 midfield pivots, usually Brian Ojeda. He drops back between the center backs sometimes, not unlike what Edu Leuven does and what Chris Durkin has done at times when they back off one or the other. But In the attack, it's Diego Luna. He'll float between the lines. He's not really a tried and true number 10, but Diego Luna isn't unlike what Marcel Hartl does in where he's able to move across the field and how he's able to move the ball between the opponent's midfield and defense. When RSL is against the ball, they will drop back into a medium block. They don't press aggressively. They watch for very, very meaningful press triggers, like a poor first touch. They'll pounce on it, but they rely on their shape and compactness. So they force teams wide that we might struggle in our midfield. They might try to have us play long balls, but they ultimately want to funnel play outside, defend against crosses, and win those second balls. So they're going to be playing Klaus really strong. Tight defensively, resilient. So they've got a lot of these low scoring wins themselves. Where St. Louis, when we win, we have to score a bucket of goals. Real Salt Lake's made a habit of grinding out a lot of low scoring wins, 1-0s, 2-1s. They won against us. It was kind of a wild match on July 5th, but this is a team that tries to be nitty and gritty and prevent goals from going on the board. They're one of MLS's lowest scoring teams, and they don't finish well. They're in fact 27th of 30 teams in both goals scored and expected goals, 36 goals in 33 matches. They can be pressed, they can be forced into error, and they're inconsistent. So this is a team that St. Louis basically needs to pounce on extremely early if they want to make them uncomfortable and dictate the style of play with our press. Players to watch for on the RSL side: Diego Luna, I mentioned, the number 8 jersey. Brian Ojeda, the number 6 in the central midfield. Rafael Cabral, goalkeeper, number 1. He's got a big save presence about him. Justin Glad, number 15, the center back. He's a leader defensively, strong in duels, and he's going to fight Klaus hard. And Alejandros Catranas, number 98 left back. That's their fullback to watch out for on the left side. So watching what maybe a Thomas Totland can do defensively against him, that could be a key matchup as Alejandros Catranas pushes higher.
Stu, anything you'd like to add about RSL, or would you like to see City to do to RSL?
Some other names just to toss out there that some City fans will recognize. Johnny Russell, the former captain of our cross state next to us rivals. It would be the ultimate cherry on top of the end run of our season if we could keep Johnny Russell out of the playoffs by beating RSL. It would be absolutely fantastic. Willie Agata is also, a former Kansas player, and he'll be with RSL as well. I don't know how much he'll be playing in this match. I know I believe he started in July. I haven't seen if he's starting a lot now, but just look out for Justin Glad. He's I believe he leads RSL in touches. So he's that heartbeat back line. And I believe last year he was really impressive against us at home, if I remember correctly, but 2024 kind of all blended together. So yeah, just a couple other names to look out for this, which should be a very exciting match.
And I'll just add that Pablo Mastroianni is the coach for RSL, and he was their coach of Real Monarchs, their 2 team, which was in USL Championship for a while, and they went all the way to the final, I believe, one year. Mm-hmm. They've always had a good team. Ooh, you lost me there. So sorry, Matt. But he would always build really good teams with the Monarchs, and he was a quality coach that moved up to the first team, and they've stuck with him for years, even though there hasn't been massive, incredible years. They go up and down, but they're always a solid team and good in MLS, as Matt just described. So just a cool story there as we kind of look at whether Critchley will stay or go and how long he'll be here if he stays. That's fun. Matt, let's hear about our boys. Let's hear about what we might see from them in this game.
Yeah, for St. Louis, I think they've got their identity. And so we know it's not going to be the same St. Louis from last time. There's no Josh Arrow, JGR, Haziel Orozco, Cedric Toyshirt. Likely no Betcher starting, likely no Ostrak. Maybe Volum's going to be in the starting 11, but we've probably got 4 total players starting from the previous game against RSL. So I look for St. Louis to be aggressive from the onset. I do look for St. Louis to play the ball long a little bit, try to win some of those second balls, just kind of testing out the waters over there, see how well they can skip over a line through the midfield. Our fullbacks, I think, are going to be on full display. I do think that what RSL tries to do, St. Louis is going to say, all right, we believe in our fullbacks. We're going to leverage Thomas Totland. We're going to leverage Conrad Vollum or Devin Padelford, whoever ends up being 2 of those 3 spots. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of touches, a lot of direction for the ball. The question for me is going to be who's going to play where and where are you going to have the biggest success? Because like I mentioned, with RSL probably using the left side to move the ball up a lot with Katranis, is that going to open up space behind him for maybe a Thomas Totland to catch a break? That there is opportunity there, I think, also for whoever our right midfielder is. Like, this sounds like a ready-made game for if Songbin Jong can start and play. Like, that will be getting in behind Katranis as he pushes higher up on the field is something St. Louis is going to absolutely try to do. Having a strong midfield, though, I think being a pivot in that area where RSL does try to control the midfield, it's going to be interesting to see how well our center backs can help direct the ball and how high up they are when like a Flou Fall tries to play the ball forward. I think that's going to be an interesting perspective from St. Louis City. When I look for ball progression, it's really where is it going to come from? Flou Fall, Thomas Totland, Edu Leuven. How are our attackers going to get the ball, and is it going to be hitting on the counter, or will we attempt to possess the ball like RSL wants to drop back and not really press high when they have the ball? Now RSL they do have over 50% average possession. So last game, City had 51%. I think City didn't play a good game at all last time. It was not ourselves, not our ideal. It wasn't what Critchley has taken this team into being now. So City building, dictating the pace, successful in the early press, those are going to be big keys. Ultimately, though, I think if City is able to neutralize Diego Luna and prevent him from connecting those lines, it's not like, we can't do enough ourselves. But if you're not going to be able to shut down this one player, then he's going to cause all kinds of havoc for you, because that's where everything centers around. The RSL is a vastly subpar team when Diego Luna isn't contributing to goals, isn't able to find himself, is able to find his flow. So shutting him down will open so much up for St. Louis.
It'll be interesting to watch that, because in the last game, Totland kind of sat back more, and I wasn't sure if that was on purpose or an accident. It might have had to do with Wolf, whether on purpose or on accident, being on that left wing. And we talk about Luna, who's a different player, right? He's going to be more central, even though he starts on the left. So, you were talking about Katranis bombing forward. So interesting to watch whether Totland, as you're talking about those fullbacks, what will they do? I'll be watching Totland in that one, because I know he likes to get forward. But we'll see what Critchley's plan is for him or how the game plays out. Stu, any last thoughts before we do our predictions?
No, I think we're ready to get into predictions and our starting 11s.
Great. Matt, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, I've got a pretty similar lineup from last week, actually. Roman Berkey in net. My left back is going to be Conrad Wallem. My center backs are Flou Fall and Henry Kessler. Thomas Totland's back in there at right back. Center mids are Chris Durkin and Edu Leuven. My attacking mids are left to right, Celio Pompeu, Marcel Hartl, and Songbin Jong, with Klaus up front. Now, I'll give some caveats to these real quick, guys. Last week, Wallem started at left back over Padelford. Interesting talk on Wallem this week that we hit on earlier. We're going to touch on Wallem more in the wind down. With Padelford planning on going back to Minnesota, even though he said he would like to stay in St. Louis too. It's an interesting story to follow. Mekhi Joyner, like I said earlier, he needs to finish the CITY2 game. I think that means he's not going to start this game. That's why Joyner is not in my starting 11. But the biggest question could possibly be Songbin Jong. And the only question for Songbin is, will he pass the fitness test necessary after returning from South Korean national team duty to be able to start? If he passes all, because he returned on Wednesday, by Saturday, I think he's going to be ready to go, but will he be ready to go enough to start? And that's going to be putting a lot of different question marks in play for David Critchley, because you're going to have to manage and navigate the Brendan McSorley question about minutes for CITY2 on Sunday and prioritizing the playoff push for them if Songbin's not able to go. But if Songbin is able to go, easy answer there. Outside chance that Betcher might start if McSorley isn't prioritized to start because of CITY2, and same with Joyner, and if Songbin can't go. So it's kind of like who's left at this point. And you're down a few attacking mids, down a few forwards because of the CITY2 kind of conundrum. I as much as I want to see this game won, I do think that Critchley owes it to Hackworth and CITY2 to at least offer them something. Don't start Mekhi Joyner and Brendan McSorley, play them both 90 minutes, and then keep them off the score sheet or off the game card for CITY2. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to play nicely together in how this operates. And that to me means neither Joyner or McSorley starts.
Okay, good stuff. Stu, what do you think?
I have a very similar lineup. by very similar, I mean the exact same as Baker, except I'm going to go with Padelford starting at left back instead of Conrad Walm, and Walm at right back. So Berkey, Padelford, Fall, Kessler, Wallum, Durkin, Leuven, Celio, Hartle, Sangbin, and Klaus. But I have a lot of faith that Sangbin will be fit. I think he's a fit guy, and I do think that those City 2 guys will be given some level of priority to go far in the playoffs.
Yeah, interesting to put Padelford in there, even though he's not been featured in the pressers and all the pictures. That would be a really funny tease there. I like that. I would say the exact same thing as Matt. Just two questions. Again, I will always say that Ostrak deserves more than he's been getting because of his talent level. He's just pushed out, I think, because of his positioning. But, with the last game being, in my opinion, the best defensive looks City has had all season while being able to attack, or at least with Critchley. It's the best the defense has looked. I want to keep that going. I want that organization to be forefront because I do have a lot of faith in the attack at this point. I think it's good. They'll have their off days, but for the most part, they're going to get their chances and do a good job with that. Can they stay organized? Can they do everything right? And I'm looking at Leuven. It sounds like Leuven will be available and in probably, but Morales, we all know Durkin will go on these walkabouts and go crazy, and we love that. And it worked well with Morales because Morales would always sit in and protect. He did a great job letting Durkin do his thing. When Leuven comes in, does it throw chaos into that situation? Does Durkin go on a walkabout and there's no one there to protect? Then we're asking a lot of the center backs and even forcing a fullback to sit back. Is it going to mess up that juju or that cooperation that we figured out in that last game? And I don't want it to get messed up. So if Morales started, I wouldn't mind it. If Leuven starts, I want to make sure that defensive organization is still good. And I'm going to be watching for that if Leuven starts, especially. Let's do the predictions for scores and get out of here. Matt, what do you think?
I got 3-1 City. I think it's going to follow City keeping RSL low on the score sheet under that 2 goals and then us rising 2 or above. I think that's a perfect mix for what Critchley is wanting to end the season with.
What do you think, Stu?
I'm going to go 2-0 City. RSL's shut out a lot. Let's keep it going.
Can City play and win against a team that's a little bit better than what we've been facing lately? I want to see a win. I'm going to say 3-2 win at home, and I just got a good vibe about this. I think they'll look good even if there is a draw or not a win. So that's what I'm thinking. That's it from us. We're about to do the wind down. We're Flyover Footy on the big 550 KTRS. We thank you so much for listening. Again, find us on the podcast if you'd like to hear a more laid back, regular conversation about all the things that we haven't talked about, more cultural, more fun stuff than it is statistical and news. So join us on anywhere you can get your podcast if you can. Otherwise, thanks again. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye. We're out.
All right. And thanks for bearing with us on these technical issues. It's like one of us keeps popping out. I have no idea what's going on.
I'm going to blame Restream on this one because I think it's kicked all of us out at some given point.
All 3 of us have popped out once at least. So we'll be right back. We're going to keep this going. Be right back for the wind down.
Refuel. Stu, are you in or are you out?
I'll be in for a few minutes before I pass out.
That's right. Got to check that Blues score. We got a 2-2 draw going right now for the Blues. Into the first period. Who do we got goals by? Holloway and Neighbors. Okay. Good stuff. Yeah, Santi's pulling the strings. I like that. I think that's definitely what's going on. I've never seen Restream act like this. That's the platform we use, Restream, where it kicks one of us off and then brings the other one back. Uh, Behind the curtain, editing this one's going to be a potential nightmare, just because there's two options that this Restream has. I'm going to pull the curtain entirely back. You can either download all audio into like a condensed single track, or you can download individual audio tracks. And what I found is that most of the time when it does that one single track, it messes up the overlap. Like one person's talking over the other person for like a split second. And so I don't like doing that. But now that we've all dropped one time, there's going to be, I'm pretty sure, like 7 different audio tracks to try to mix together. So I'm gonna need a handful of these boys to get me through the night. It's October, so I'm absolutely drinking an Oktoberfest. Which I actually got to go. We got to go to Urban Chestnut's Oktoberfest again this year, and it was fantastic as always.
Were you featured on their promotion this year?
Yes, actually. Well, technically just Michelle was.
Okay.
She did the Stein holding competition. Like she usually does that because they do a men's and a women's now. And they love that picture of her holding that Stein.
That's awesome.
I wouldn't be surprised if we were next year, because we got the girls to wear dirndls again this year. And if I do say so myself, that is the greatest family photo we always take every year.
It's very cute. I love it too.
I even wore my lederhosen to the game a few weeks ago, because Oktoberfest was, I forget which game it was. Might have been the LAFC game, actually. Ugh, that's fair. Yeah, it was the LAFC game. Urban Chestnut's Oktoberfest was that day, so we went straight from Oktoberfest, and I should have stayed at Oktoberfest and had a few more liters and a few more pints. That's for sure.
I like that everyone's listing the drinks they're having for the wine down. That's nice.
We need to have some kind of call-in type option. That's what needs to exist, where you can like feature somebody, or they send in their pictures of something like that. So we've got Jason over here with his neat pour of Hirsch single barrel.
Very nice.
That sounds delightful. Aaron's got some lime Perrier. Good
Perrier.
stuff. Perrier. I am shamed. Thank God this isn't on the actual pod recording, so now people can just see my shame drip through me. Is Dom Perrier spelled differently?
Actually, I think it's spelled the same. Dom Perrier is.
So this isn't my
the
fault.
champagne.
This isn't my fault.
Oh, what do you mean?
I was thinking on that front. I know what he's talking about, the non-alcoholic Perrier.
Well, no, I think you pronounce it Perrier in the champagne version too.
Come on, man, you're killing
me. I'm sorry. Hey, I don't get to correct you very often. Usually it's the other way around. So
I've made it 33 games with all of these absurd player names, getting all these mostly right, and I cut myself off at the knees with a lime Perrier.
I should have been more gracious. You are always way too gracious to me when I say something stupid. So
well,
that's not very nice of me.
At least we're not recording for the pod right now. It's just if somebody happens to be watching on YouTube or live and they get to this point, which I don't know, people might skip the interlude that we have.
Maybe. Let's do it though. You ready?
Ready when you are.
Here we go. Welcome back. Hold on. God. You know that phlegm thing where it makes you sound like an alien? That happened. Welcome everyone to the wind down. Oh, and cats!
It feels like forever since we've heard that sound on a wind down.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long season, and it feels like it's been a long time since we've been having a wind down like this. But heading into the last game, you know, we've kind of got 2 things left in the season, right? We've got this last game, and then we have the deep dive postmortem that exists after the season. So to me, this is just like, all right, guys, we've done all we can. We've previewed the match. We've gotten to this point. There is nothing left to do, but hope Critch has his guys ready to go. The tactics are sound, and he's learned enough in 18 matches that he makes the right choices. And so we're sitting back and we're watching it unfold.
Stu, are you drinking anything for this conversation?
I'm gonna be the old man here. I am drinking a nice lemon loaf tea,
Ooh.
so I will sleep soundly tonight. I'm all about sleep as I approach my midlife.
Every time you mention tea, I always think of obviously England. So has anybody booked their nonstop flight to London yet?
Mm.
Yes,
Stu?
but not with. I am
British
actually
Airways?
going back. I'm going back in November, but I booked that flight before they announced the April
No.
trip, so I'm already going in November, so I won't be in that inaugural crew. But I do have a friend who's flying from England to St. Louis on their first flight over, so that'll
I
be
want to
fun.
see. I want to see. Like if you're going to England in the 2025-2026 season of the Premier League or Championship, League One, League Two, if you're going to see a soccer game in and you're using that nonstop flight, I want to know about it because I would
I
love
agree.
to see pictures. I want to see like who's going to be the first people because it's not till April, so you've only got a few weeks, maybe a month of action for that first season. I would I don't know if we ever get flyover merch, I'll buy you a scarf or give you a scarf if you show me that you're one of those first
Cool.
people that go.
I'll say this on the wind down. I got a giant batch of scarves that are messed up uh, because of me. I messed up. So if you want a messed up flyover scarf, free,
Oh boy.
just let me know. I try to bring them to games and just hand them out.
We're
Is that bad, Matt? Do you not?
no,
Oh, okay. Sorry.
don't do it. I'm envisioning like you said they're messed up, so I'm envisioning like in championship games where both teams have their champion shirts made and you sell some like in the Middle East or
Yeah.
something for the loser. I'm envisioning that where like you see it on the street and you're like, okay, like they were listening to Flyover that one time,
Yeah.
and so now they know. It's like, okay, they were in Egypt after this season, so they got that shirt.
I was trying to get the arch on the scarf to look like the arch when it was draped, and I didn't approve the scarf in time, which was ridiculous that I missed it because it was ages. And so they gave it to me basically like upside down or sideways. It doesn't make any sense the way it looks, but the other side looks fine.
You
So
know, I'll make a vow. All right.
mhm.
I'll make a vow right now, and it's probably the OCATs talking because God knows I don't have time in my life to really do this. But I will say, this is my vow. I seeing what the chat's doing right now. And I'm gonna point it out. I
Oh,
will do my
ooh.
best to get flyover scarves, whether it's a limited edition or not. Like, might as well start with scarves because people keep asking for shirts. I'm gonna get scarves for next season. It might be 10, it might be 20, it might be 50. I don't know what the price is. I'll have to talk to like Mitch Maurice or something from the Luligans who like does this on the yearly, and he's basically got this like down to a science. But I will figure it out. That is my promise before next season. That is my goal.
Just to throw in there, I did take Mark Stock mentioned the nonstop flight to Frankfurt, and I got to take that. It was wonderful to have a
So
nonstop.
so did I. I keep seeing Facebook memories pop up about my European trip last year when we went to a river cruise on the Danube.
That's right.
And we took that Frankfurt flight and then a puddle jump up to Prague. That flight's awesome. Like
Yep.
I've never been on an international flight like that. And so it might be like people have flown first class before, but man, if you've never taken that flight from St. Louis to Frankfurt, it's nice. It's not super cheap, but I don't think it's that expensive.
It's the same as most. It looks cheap, and then you check out, and all the fees get added, and it's
Okay.
pretty much
Yeah,
the same
but
as everything.
it was a nice flight. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed myself, and probably you were, high on life going over to
Yeah.
Germany and Czech Republic or Czechia, but that's a flight worth taking if you've never taken it, the Frankfurt nonstop.
Yep. And there's rumors of a Madrid flight nonstop from a Spanish airlines. I forgot what it's
Yeah,
called. So
Iberia,
that'd be cool.
Iberia Air. I
There you
think.
go.
I would start watching La Liga just for that.
Right. Cool. Well, let's start talking about something. We've got a nice selection of things. I think sporting director rumors is like definitely what we should lead off with. We shouldn't
Okay.
bury the lead.
No, shouldn't barely lead. So the funny thing is, this timeline that's kind of started to exist where you have Justin saying that we're going to sign somebody or announce somebody by the end of the month, coupled with these couple things that make you think like it's going to be the week after. Now, I really don't want to hear from people saying like if it's a week and a half or 2 weekends from now and nothing's been announced, like where's my sporting director? I'm not saying something's for sure going to be announced. I'm saying breadcrumbs exist where you see a narrative develop, especially with Justin's timeline. Now there's also the naysayers out there. I would call them, that are just, since Lutz was let go, entirely pessimistic, entirely detractors of the entire process. Like there's a finite number of days that exist between now and November 26th, and no number of days that exist now is going to be a good number to evaluate talent properly. I think that belays a little bit of what a sporting director that's hired can do as far as film goes, as far as talking to players, but also as far as leveraging the existing talents of the coaching staff. I'm talking about Critch, I'm talking about Baggio, I'm talking about the rest of the technical staff and John Hackworth in being able to make those decisions. So no, I don't expect a sporting director to come in either next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and be able to unilaterally know every single thing about the players to the extent that Lutz did at the time. I don't expect that, but I also don't think we need that. There's enough people who have been working with these players and evaluating these players day in and day out that still exist on this club, all the first team staff, John Hackworth, that can help inform an incoming sporting director if it's not John Hackworth. So whether it's next week or beyond, like the concept of a sporting director coming in and only having X number of days to evaluate talent, that tells like 1% of the story, because you're discarding all this knowledge that our coaching staff has that will be able to help inform our sporting director. That's how a new sporting director, no matter the timeline, no matter the circumstance, that's how they get up to speed on their team. That's how they understand who they have at their disposal, who their arsenal of players are. And so I'm not worried about that at all. More what I'm worried about is selecting the right sporting director. And so to that extent, like we've heard these rumors, and I mentioned like the fact that because there's a finite time period put on this, whether it's next week, week after, end of October, like we haven't heard any leaks. I think it was Abo in the chat was mentioning right as soon as we started streaming this, that he said it's the Montreal guy. The extra practice week, no leaks. If it were the Brentford guy, someone would leak on the other side of the pond. And what he means by that is it's Corey Ray, not Lee Dykes. Because if you remember weeks ago, I went over this. I think it was one of those pods I did by myself, but it was like so much data on these guys. And so Lee Dykes is the 41-year-old Englishman, currently the technical director at Brentford FC. He is reportedly being pursued by St. Louis, is on their short list. And he's grown from the scouting departments up in England, from Bury, from Crawley Town, Notts County, Oldham Athletic, on up to be head of scouting at Brentford, and then promoted up to their technical director. He is basically followed, and Stu, you know the championship and the Premier League much better than I do, so correct me if I'm wrong, but he has followed them from like 2019 into 2022 when he took over technical director, which is the second highest person in their sporting department. And that's followed Brentford's rise into almost security in the Premier League. And by security, I mean they're not dealing with relegation concerns year in and year out like the yo-yo teams do. So that's why I think Lee Dykes is exciting in that concept, because of what he's been able to do to a team like this. And he has a ton of scouting algorithm type pedigrees to his name. Like he created his own algorithm. He has the kind of experience and pedigree in a top tier sporting department, growing a team from little-ish to the big leagues, like the biggest league possible. And so I think there's very little like concern about a Lee Dykes person, right, Stu?
Yeah, I mean, Brentford is known for having their analytical approach kind of top down. through including, Thomas Franks as their head coach, but also Lee Dykes and whoever, I forget who had the role prior to his appointment. He's definitely one that is exciting as far as what you think he could bring to the role. He's not familiar with MLS, which is definitely, I would say most people would consider that a strike against him. He was on Talk Sport radio yesterday, I think, in the UK. So he isn't currently in the US to
Right.
our knowledge. I mean, obviously, you can fly everywhere quickly, so he could be in and out. No one would know. If we've looked at him, quite possibly he's been over and toured facilities. We don't know. So we should expect that he's been focused on Brentford for the most part. Though over international window, that would be a great opportunity for him to be over here. So there have been no leaks, so no one knows. I wouldn't expect, honestly, that it would be leaked if he was leaving Brentford, to be honest, because those things do move quick. And unless it's an agent linking it, I don't think there's necessarily a reason why it would leak.
That's part of my thing is remember that if something's going to if people want to keep things closed under wraps, there are ways to do it. It doesn't always work well. You've got fans that see somebody, you have cameras that exist everywhere, but it's not unheard of. So I totally get what Abo in chat is saying, that it would leak if a guy like Lee Dykes were to hop on a private plane, fly to the US, do what he needs to do, and then come back. In the US, I don't think anybody's going to leak anything unless they want it to. Like, nobody knows what Lee Dykes looks like in St. Louis. Nobody does.
True.
So it would not leak on that front. It would leak locally in England, in Brentford, for instance. That's what he's saying. And so there would likely be some site or some news that pops up. But I think remember, England's different than Sweden and everything like that, but I don't recall there being much news on Olaf Melberg until like right before it happened. I don't remember anybody making waves about when Diego was signed. So like, these people, I know they're different roles, different levels of visibility, but my point necessarily here is that let's not give too much credit for the technical director at Brentford having eyes on him 24/7, or to the point where somebody's going to like watch his every movement if he decides to go to America. And same thing with Lutz Pfannenstiel. Like, if I recall correctly, because it's been a long time ago, but there really weren't massive rumors, massive news, massive like Lutz Pfannenstiel has been cited boarding a plane to St. Louis. And Lutz was a really well-known person before he joined St. Louis, like world famous soccer player, a manager, front office person. So I don't know that I 100% buy that, but I do understand it. And I get that. But the attachment thing is the point of it. And I think there may be more nuances to the fact that he's the active technical director. So St. Louis, to their credit, St. Louis City is good at keeping things under wraps when they can control the narrative. Leaks happen at the MLS front office. They happen on the other side of the deal, but they don't usually happen from St. Louis unless St. Louis specifically wants things to get out, where they might talk to a Tom Bogert. Somebody in the organization might tell somebody, and that's their avenue to get something out, but only if they want to. This news, they wouldn't want it to get out. But on the other front, guys, Corey Ray is the other name besides John Hackworth and Lee Dykes that has come out. And Corey Ray, to me, oftentimes I don't know what to think of this potential hire. I try to get ahead of this, because if something's getting announced next week, I want to be mentally prepared to be either excited for it, tepid for it, pessimistic for it, but I want to have reasons and justifications for it. And I honestly don't know how I feel about Corey Ray right now. He's a 40-year-old, I think he's Canadian, because he went to school up in Canada. He interned at Toronto FC. I went through his resume a few weeks ago, but he basically interned for Toronto FC in 2006, right before their MLS, before they started in MLS. And he just rose through the ranks of Toronto FC under Tim Bezbatchenko. Terrible with names on that front. 2 strikes on this one for me.
Mm-hmm.
He eventually gets promoted to the assistant GM of team operations strategy. He's got to focus on player recruitment, athlete relations. He works on player contracts, player movements, budgets for Toronto's farm team. Right? So his responsibilities as an assistant GM for Toronto are with their farm team and their youth academy. So he leaves Toronto in 2020, joins the Columbus Crew as an assistant GM under that same GM, Tim Bezbatchenko, that promoted him in Toronto. So he's basically Bezbatchenko's guy. And so he brings him into Columbus and he makes him the GM of Crew 2. And he gets accolades for the GM of Crew 2. He wins the 2022 MLS Next Pro Executive of the Year, finalist for the 2023 award. Laurent Courtois was his head coach for Crew 2, who that they've got close stories at CF Montreal here in a bit. But when Bezbatchenko was let go in June of 2024, Ray was also let go. And so there's this thing of Ray's getting these jobs because Bezbatchenko is the GM, and Ray's responsibilities are capped at this point in his career with the 2 teams with MLS Next Pro. So Ray at this point was hired by CF Montreal in July 2024, first as a consultant working closely with their technical staff, sporting strategy for Montreal, then becomes the director of soccer in November 2024. This is just last year. He was then fired by CF Montreal in August of this year, not even a full year on the job. To his credit on this, Montreal is a dumpster fire, and Montreal seems to be consolidating power in their sporting department to family members of the ownership, the Saputos. So it's a few different folks in the Saputo family that are now running the sporting department for Montreal. So there's nepotism, there's weird stuff going on that Ray might be the unfortunate just fall guy for. But when we talk MLS experience, you're going to have a tough time selling me that Corey Ray is the guy to provide it when his roles and responsibilities were over the 2 teams. And that doesn't deal with the MLS roster rules. It doesn't deal with the DP, the TAM, the GAM, the U22s, all of the nuances in how you spend and build an MLS roster. Things that need to exist, that some kind of resume to that needs to exist in the front office, whether it's sporting director, technical director. Like I joked on a few weeks ago, I joked that if you're going to hire externally, like the perfect fit here would be having a Lee Dykes type person as a sporting director, a Corey Ray type person, or a John Hackworth as the technical director, and then a David Critchley as the head coach. And the reasons are you get all of that organizational knowledge, you get that top level experience from the Premier League that a Lee Dykes person, if not Lee Dykes, then that kind of a resume could offer. But you also have a voice in the room of MLS-ish, whether it's Next Pro or what John Hackworth's been doing at the MLS level. You have that voice in the room, and then David Critchley with the culture aspect of the team and the proven results on the head coach. So I go a lot of different ways with these specific examples. And again, these are just 3 names: Lee Dykes, Corey Ray, John Hackworth, as the names that have been touted at some level. I think it was Tom Bogert reported that John Hackworth is a finalist. And then you had an English outlet report on Lee Dykes, and you had Ball Watching report on Corey Ray. So various levels of finalists category here, various levels of how they might have heard from various, like where they heard this from.
Can you give the list of like who you would put where with Ray, Hackworth, and Critchley?
Oh, I would put a Lee Dykes type person. I would rather have a sporting director, top man, that has more experience leading an organization, or at least a number 2 man at a huge organization, and proven results in growing them from promoting them and then preventing relegation. I would rather have that level of experience at the top. And I would rather have a technical director who knows the MLS roster rules, a technical director who knows the MLS mechanisms and can help navigate those waters. And so that would put more of a Lee Dykes type person as a sporting director, more of a Hackworth or Corey Ray at technical director, and then a Critchley at head coach.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting, like, because I guess like Diego could bring in someone of a high caliber of Brentford, and it makes you wonder, like, do we want a high caliber person? It's amazing what Brentford's doing, but is Lee Dykes going to be able to come over as a single person, or maybe one other person with him, and copy that just on his own with the staff that we have in St. Louis? I wonder that. And do we want like a Premier League person in charge of all the culture kind of stuff? I mean, an MLS guy is not necessarily better. But that's just my thoughts immediately. Stu, any more thoughts about Ray, or how you'd like to see it break down?
Yeah, I will say Ray's reputation is good in MLS. Now, when we talk about experience with MLS roster rules, I can't speak exactly to what Ray's knowledge is to break that down, but I think it's almost a guarantee he's more familiar with them than Lee Dykes.
Yes.
So Dykes has also been connected to bigger clubs, Newcastle for one, and there was another Premier League club, I believe, last year he was attached to. Maybe it was this year. So he might be holding out until he gets a Premier League offer at who knows, a larger British club, English club. So that's a tough one. Maybe he's waiting until November international break, and that's when we pull the trigger. It's going to be tough. I mean, my gut is saying, or my heart is saying Dykes. My heart is saying Ray is probably going to end up getting the offer. And I'll even go out on a limb and say, assuming Hackworth doesn't stay as technical director, if he feels like there's, he's tried for 2 jobs now over two seasons, time to move on. I'll say Sorber. Sorber is technical director, Ray is sporting director, and Critchley is head coach.
Boy, you just went for it there.
Yeah, I'm going all out on my hot takes right now. I'm spending all my powder.
Man, I mean, if you're gonna really make a wave in the lead up to the World Cup, you put Mike Sorber not only on the coaching staff of the academy, but then you just like toss him up.
I'll just say that I'll repeat what I've said a million times, which is like, I just think Hackworth needs to be in this organization. Because the thing we need most is consistency. We gotta build up the familiar, keep some sort of semblance of the structure that we've already built. Let's not throw it in the trash can, because it's good right below the senior level. There's really nothing going terribly wrong below the senior level. And like, Hackworth knows the culture. I think the culture is good. And I just really want Hackworth to stay. And if to get Hackworth to stay, he's our sporting director, not our technical director, like, I really don't have any problems with that. And maybe you bring in someone who's the technical director, who is more of a wild card, right? Because that would make sense to me, is like technical advising the sporting director, able to bring in a bunch of players that person knows, just like Hack did for Lutz. Maybe Hack keeps the entire culture going. He makes the biggest decisions, but the technical guy is able to instill a little bit of flavor, a little bit of a push of something different, right? And so then we make the familiar the main card, and then, which is like opposite of Olaf, right? Because that, that's not what we wanted, right? So we can put that in the trash can and keep everything before and after that. With Hackworth. And so I would push for Hackworth to at least be on his technical. I'd be 100% fine with him being sporting, but I do like the idea of bringing in an outside technical director.
Okay, so
that's the case.
Here's my question. One thing you said really kind of caught my attention, which is that nothing seems to be wrong beyond the first team. Like the 2 team, the academies, we've got sustained success at a lot of different levels here. CITY2 is the epitome of sustained success, with 4 straight seasons, right? Having made the playoffs, and they're perennially fighting for the top conference, the top record in the league. So if you have sustained success from the 2-team down, where you're not relying on the MLS rules to be able to sign players, scouting internationally, leveraging U22s, DPs, young DPs, gam and tam spending properly. Like if those are the things you're struggling with, then how does that play into what you need from a sporting director whose primary, I would argue, the sporting director's primary responsibility is to make sure the first team is successful, and then more it could all flow from there. Like where the technical director, John Hackworth, was the director of coaching. His responsibility was to align all the coaching, all the organizational culture, the strategy between the teams. Now technical director, we don't have a specific definition of what his responsibilities are, but wouldn't you think the sporting director's responsibilities would be more attuned to what the first team needs, and then they're overseeing a lot of the other decisions being made, or kind of making them, but they're not the priority? So would Hackworth in the sporting director job be the answer?
It sounds like you're kind of thinking the sporting director doesn't have his hand in all that, and maybe that's true. I don't
Well,
know the ins and outs of
I,
it.
I think he does, but I'm just saying, like, the problem with this organization is the first team. The
Mhm.
the 2-team and the academies are cruising. And I just wonder if Hackworth more has, and maybe this is an argument for Hackworth. I don't know. Maybe Hackworth has more had his hands in City 2 and the academy buckets. Dale Schilly deserves a ton of credit as the academy
Mhm.
director. Don't forget him. But I just think the sporting director's primary responsibility is the first team. And so the problem is with the first team, I just struggle with thinking that somebody internally should be promoted to the sporting director, agnostic of the person. I like John Hackworth. I think he's one of the best people in this organization. But I also wonder if we would be better served having a sporting director from the outside hired in, because our first team has been so underperforming for now so long.
Stu, one of my favorite comments I think it was you, and I just want to throw it to you anyway on this topic because I think you're the expert on this, is like a lot of the academy is like kind of become very St. Louis oriented. A lot of St. Louisans have come into the academy. Sorber's one of them. I think Hack we can kind of claim as our own at this point. But they're coming from all the academies around St. Louis. Critch is one of them from the Fuse. What do you think about that STL influence? And what do you think about what Matt and I are kind of like discussing about, Hack and all the other people? Maybe the St. Louis influence is important, and maybe it is the success of our club, or maybe it is part of the failure of our senior team. What do you think?
Well, I think there is a lot of talent in St. Louis just from, I mean, it's been a, academy or just youth hotbed for a long time. I think the club is aware of the importance of bringing in non-St. Louis coaching and not relying upon only St. Louis coaches. I think with Sorber, he was a little bit of a different situation in that he was the technical director of Toronto FC.
Yeah.
When he got let go there in 2023. I think he took a year off before he came back to St. Louis, and Scott Gallagher hired him. So, I mean, he's a big name there. I know back in the day there were rumors, or not rumors, I shouldn't say that. There were calls for City to pursue Noonan, and of course Noonan got hired by Cincinnati before we even got around to hiring a head coach. So, I mean, I'm a sucker and I'm a homer for St. Louis, and I love seeing the St. Louis guys come back. But the last thing I want to see is becoming overly reliant upon St. Louis natives who aren't the right people for the job. I mean, where you're from is what matters to me. And like you said, Hack wasn't a St. Louisan, but now we claim it as our own. So these get the right guys, keep them around for a long time, and they become part of the fabric. They become part of St. Louis.
Yeah, these clubs are bringing in quality people because they have the money to do so. And I think Critchley's one of those where they were able to bring this guy in that was really good because the money's there, and that helps. And that is like in some ways, you know, our academies are pulling from the best. Sorry, St. Louis City's academy is pulling from all the best other academies in St. Louis, and I think that's true for coaching as well. For the same exact reason as the talent is there, right?
On the player front, I think one of the
Hold on, I'm so sorry, Stu. Do you want to say anything before you go? Because I know you want to go to bed. I don't want to keep you.
No, I'm gonna bounce, but it's been a pleasure as always, guys, to talk with you. And excited.
My other promise for the next year is I'm gonna get Stu a webcam and a background.
Yeah,
I'm in a nice dank South City basement right now with nothing but stained concrete blocks behind me.
I will soundproof your basement.
That's the flyover. That's the flyover hustle right there. That's how we roll.
All right. I mean, I'll hold you to that. Scarves, and I get a free laptop and
scarves and a Stu setup.
Renovated basement. So
can't do the show without you. Have a good one, Stu.
Thanks, Stu. Good night, bud. Sorry, Matt, go for it.
I was going to say that the only criticism I've seen from our academy is that we focus too much on St. Louis. Like we draw too much from other academies, like Gallagher, Fuse, like the preference, not preference necessarily, but the prominence of our top tier academy prospects coming from those feeder clubs, those feeder systems, more or less. And not drawing because the homegrown territories are starting to go away. They're not as restrictive as they used to be. Like Aaron Hurd, like you can bring in players from all over. That's an example that mixed success, but we don't have many of those examples. And so I don't know, from a player front, from a front office front, I don't want to be, I know we have a ton of talent here, so I don't ever want to minimize that. But at the same time, I also don't want to be restricted to that. And I think there is a good balance that exists both in the front office conversation and the player conversation. And in the front office, I think it parlays itself into, yeah, you Critchley, I don't know how you view Critchley as an Englishman, as a Lou Fuse guy, so he's local, but you know, maybe that's a good example of like, don't just hire somebody because they have experience locally. You don't sign a player because they have quality experience locally. You know, like it's almost like it shouldn't be a point of conversation at all. It should just be something that happens organically. Like we should sign players and recruit staff from St. Louis clubs and organizations because we have a ton of high quality St. Louis clubs and organizations. Like the talent is there that deserves this bump up that St. Louis City can offer them. But at the same time, we should also have a scouting department in place that can identify those front office and players, talking about teenagers, from other areas of the country, other countries. I just think there needs to be developed a better balance going forward. And maybe the sporting director is the person to set that tone, set that precedence. Now that we're up and running, which Lutz, and then don't get me wrong, Lutz was kind of like behind the 8 ball here. So he deserves a ton of credit for standing this whole thing up, creating something out of nothing. That doesn't just happen, right? So it's drawing from what you can, drawing from what you know, which we know he did in his networks that existed with agents in Europe, locally, that he came and he watched how many, like we've talked about this in years past, how many college games, how many club games did Lutz himself go to? Lutz and Vin, his I forget Vin's role, the director of operations, I think it is. So sorry, Vin. I saw him at the zoo tonight and I forget his title. But the idea that they're scouting in person ahead of City, all of these places, they're developing these relationships. Like he put in the legwork to create something. I think now part of the responsibility of another sporting director is to take what he's created, take the concepts of what he's created, the relationships that he's created locally, plus any kind of relationships you have abroad and where you came from, and mesh those. But you also have to have more than just the sporting director. Like the onus is on the sporting director to make the decisions, but you have to have the entire front office staff that complements each other well. So I will say that is one thing that when Diego said right after Lutz was let go, that they want to have a balance, a mixture of things in the front office. That might have been my favorite thing that he said. And it definitely for me is I need to see it to believe it. But conceptually hearing him say we need to find a balance in MLS experience, we need to find a balance in international experience, like conceptually, that is the right approach. It's now on him to put that into practice. But I think that is the right approach, to have that balance. And that's ultimately what it's going to be about.
Yeah, and so I kind of hear you repeating a little bit too of like not being too St. Louis, and I think I don't know if this is the way you meant it, but it sounds like your um, the biggest crime maybe done was not searching for abroad for academy players more often, and I think that's something I agree. I think that is a big thing that needs to be fixed because you can't have an academy in MLS anymore without being competitive in that world, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think it's just part of it now. And I think we were behind the eight ball on that. But I don't want to, but I will also add that like when we all each gave a quick list, I don't think we put much thought of it into it. So I don't think anyone should hold us to it. But I will say that we had a little familiar and a little bit of something else added in.
Yeah.
And the familiar tended to be kind of St. Louis based in some form or fashion that we all kind of laid out there. And I think we all three agree on that. And it sounds like maybe Diego, not necessarily the St. Louis tie, but an international and MLS experience. I think that makes a lot of sense. And so I don't know. Is there any, do you want to talk more about like what you're worried about if it's too much St. Louis and not enough of the other, or did I kind of nail what
Well,
you were trying, the 2 points you were trying to make
no,
there?
I think you nailed it. And are we talking now players, or are we talking front office?
No. Like front office. To me,
Oh,
so I guess what's important to me, and maybe I have this wrong because it seemed like you pushed back on it. I'm just trying to kind of,
yeah.
just like I messed up the Klaus thing today. I want to make sure I'm thinking clearly. To me, it is important to have a little bit of St. Louis culture in there because I think there's like the flyover mentality, right? There's like, we care about grassroots, we care about blue collar, we care about, things like the Open Cup, we care about bringing up our players to be, um, you know, the pedigree that we've been able to sustain without an MLS team for all these years, all
Yeah.
these national team players. Like that's something that is important. And St. Louisans have been able to do that. You know what I mean? St. Louis clubs have been able to do that, however they've been able to do it. So that's something like a bar has been set in that regard that needs to be matched or close to it. So to me, having St. Louisans in there will hopefully represent all those things that I care about personally. Clearly, this is my personal list. But we need outside help, right? I think Lutz was a little too single-minded at times, and he needed a little more pushback, perhaps. And so, I like the idea of having Hack in there for a little bit of consistency, but I really do want someone else pretty high up with a lot of power to shake things up, even though we've got this base of St. Louis City culture from Hack. But is that
Yeah.
wrong? Would you push back on any of those specifically?
From a player perspective, no. From a front office perspective, maybe. Because I don't know. When this organization was first founded, it had Lutz in the sporting department. It had Lutz. It had Vin Coe, who is local St. Louis, and he was in the front office, and he was working with Lutz, going and scouting all these places, and you may be providing that St. Louis flair. But I also think that John Hackworth, as the director of coaching and then technical director, like you said, he's not a St. Louis guy. We might have adopted him to be a St. Louis guy, but when I think of having a St. Louis flair, I don't think of somebody coming in here and we like what he's doing, so he's our guy. That's not a St. Louisan. That's not a St. Louis guy. So I actually might 100% disagree with the fact that the front office needs St. Louis flair. I think that concept might limit us entirely into what we want to have at our disposal as far as an experience perspective, as far as a relationship perspective, and maybe a knowledge perspective when it comes to running an organization. But I go back to a couple things, like, let's start at the top. The Taylors and Carolyn Kindle. They are St. Louis through and through. Like, they understand, I think, pretty well the fabric of St. Louis. They understand. Don't get me wrong, they're billionaires. We know that, but they have philanthropic experience. They have living here experience. They see the good and the bad. So Carolyn Kindle, seeing the good and the bad, hired a sporting director from Germany. Okay, that was her first decision.
Mm-hmm.
She hired a president and a general manager from England. We don't have a history of St. Louis City of hiring local St. Louisans into the front office. That's never been this club's identity. And I don't think that's ever been a need to say we need to have the leadership of this organization, the day-to-day, the department heads, whatever. We don't need to have everyone be St. Louisans. You could go further in the organization, like a Matt Seebeck, who is a born and bred St. Louisan. Like it probably doesn't get more local than Matt Seebeck, who is a voice in the front office, not related to the sporting aspect, but from a how you shape this organization, how you create the culture of the organization. Like that is a voice that is very much St. Louis. Clea Collier, the former community relations person, very much St. Louis. Courtney Mueller, very much St. Louis, as far as I know. A lot of these people who run these aspects of the club are local St. Louisans. So I think that adds the cultural aspect to St. Louis, whereas I would never honestly want to limit the sporting department roles to saying, you know what, we should have, and I don't mean any disrespect when I say this, but I don't think we should say we need a St. Louisan in that conversation, whether it's head coach, technical director, sporting director.
I'm glad you said it that way because I didn't think about how the phrase St. Louisan would come off, and I don't think I explained it well. I don't necessarily mean we need a native in there because that's what's going to help us, like a St. Louis native. I think I'm like scared to bring in. I think Lutz worked really well because he's German, and I think he brought a lot of especially a German that was working in Dusseldorf and Hoffenheim. So he brought in a lot of the stuff that matched with St. Louis.
That's a good thing. Yes.
Mixed with my favorite parts of Bundesliga. Right. So I'm biased in that way. I think that was the perfect hire for those reasons. And so I think what I'm saying isn't St. Louis native. What I mean is I don't want to lose the cultural St. Louis sporting vibes. And that's what's important to me. So when I think of the St. Louis sporting hire, I think of, again, open cup, blue collar, all those things that I mentioned before.
Sure.
And so to me, I feel like Diego isn't that at all. I feel like Carolyn Kindle Betts is not, or I'm so sorry. Carolyn Kindle is not that on the sporting side. That's not how their brains are working. And so they're going to hire people who can make a global brand. I think that's what Jerry said earlier. That's very important on that side. But, are we going to bring in this Brentford guy to make us even more Premier League-y? That's scary to me as a St. Louis soccer culture guy, grassroots, especially soccer culture guy.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, cool, bring in someone like the Brentford guy. As long as Hack is in there to bring that side, I'm good with that. So
I get what you mean there.
Is the wrong word, but the technical cultural side is important to me, and I want it represented one way or another. And I worry about it blindsiding our high-end technical staff and ownership because it's not something they necessarily are looking for.
I get what you mean there, and I think the comparison to what the resume that Lutz had, that's a good example of ownership, understanding the identity, the culture, and what makes St. Louis St. Louis.
To their credit.
Not necessarily saying we need a St. Louisan to do that, but we need somebody who meshes well with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's also something you look to for a sporting director and a head coach. You look to somebody who can keep that identity of what you want your organization to be because it feels so St. Louis. Like you work really hard. Like you put in the effort. You're not going to say, we're going to just rest on this really flashy person who's going to score a goal from 30 yards out and they can do this once or twice a game. Like you're not just going to let one person take over a game. It's the designated team thing came out of the St. Louis blue collar identity. Like that's what it was born from, where it was everybody working as hard as you possibly can for 90 minutes together as a team, not letting one person take over a game. And you need a little bit of that in MLS, yeah, but I think that's what they did with Lutz, and I think that's kind of the next journey is you have to find somebody who has the knowledge, has the experience, has the expertise, has the relationships, has all of the things that can lead an organization, but still at their heart wants to keep this club with this hardworking mentality, the high press will remain, like all of the tactical things that go into making this club a St. Louis club, like those have to still exist. You just need a sporting director who can increase the quality of all of that.
Aaron Leak had a great question here. Would you rather be good with STL style people or style of play or whatever, or potentially great without the STL style? Honest question. So like, what if we brought in a I don't know.
A possession-based sporting director who they want their style to be completely different. They want to play tiki-taka.
Or let's say Olaf went with his defensive style and stuck with it, and we were more successful eventually. Let's say he was good at coaching that, right? Would we be happy with that? You know,
we adapted our style based on what the coach was doing because it was somewhat effective, and we needed to kind of lean into it almost.
Yeah, because I think the St. Louis player could learn how to defend first and counterattack. I don't think that's a problem.
I'll tell you.
But is it something I would vote for? I would say no. I'd rather have this pressing style, which I think we're good at anyway, naturally, and be fine that way. Good years, bad years, and I would take that over being great and boring. Me personally, I think I'm in the minority though.
I'm going to disagree wholeheartly. So I love the
Olaf was good at coaching his style. He implemented it and he was good at coaching it. And he had us let's say fifth or third in the West by the end of the season.
But we were like 25th in goals scored or 28th in goals scored. But we were like second or third, top 5 in goals allowed type of a thing.
Like 35 meters in PPDA.
Yeah. Or 25 or 30, something egregious. Right. So I will say that my experience over the past year and a half, probably, maybe, year and a half, is that fans want to win. Like, it's nice to say, we're going to play this exciting style of soccer. We're going to play where we're just always going to run. We're going to play nonstop soccer. We're going to press. We're going to put pressure on the other team, and we're going to make fans want to watch this. Doesn't mean a hill of beans if you don't win. And that's where I go to. My answer for Aaron's question is, if we had to play a completely different style, but we could be great at it, as opposed to playing the St. Louis style that we're doing and be good at it, I would take great in a heartbeat. Because I guarantee that if we have consistent 3-point matches at home, 3-point matches on the road, we're rewarding our traveling fans, they get to the end of the game and they're celebrating a win. Nobody cares how you got to it. You could pull off, you'll deep dive it, you'll post-mortem it later. We'll talk about it later, saying those first 80 minutes were just mind-numbing soccer. But those last 10 minutes, we pulled it out. We did what we needed to do. It was gritty, it was tough. It might have not have been flashy, or maybe even it was flashy for only 5 minutes. But we bunkered down, we kept everything we needed to, and then 5 minutes towards the end of the game, we got the win. If we do that for let's say 8 out of 10 matches, and we're sitting top 2, top 3 in the table playing that style of soccer, we're all going to come around to it. We're all going to say, you know what? Let them do it. I'm okay. I trust them at this point. I'm okay watching them, run out the clock, make the other team do their thing, and then strike and stab them. I guarantee if we were great doing that kind of style of play, fans would absolutely come around, because at the end of the day, you're a winning soccer team. You're a great soccer. You're a top 4. You're pushing for the supporter shield. That's what matters.
I think you've convinced me, because I will say that's what St. Louis FC was, especially under, oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name. the final coach, was a lot of fun to watch, and we defended really well. And that's mostly what St. Louis FC was like defend well and hit them on the counter, except for under Preki. And styles change. I will say that I also really enjoy Crystal Palace. And I think we could be a very much like a Crystal Palace kind of team and still be exciting and fun. So I think you convinced me. And styles evolve, right? So like the pressing style may completely go out of style. It's not like we need to like dogmatically follow this style. So you got me on that. I admit that's a little bit too much.
And I know we're running out of time, but I did want to have one more topic really fast, maybe like a 2-minute topic if you're okay with that. Conrad Vollum. I wanted to go back and address like what we skipped over in the first part of the show. So if you're still with us, whether live stream, YouTube, or an hour and 40 or so minutes into this, thank you for listening to it. Conrad Vollum is a subject of a lot of speculation on his purchase option because there's a lot of numbers going around. There's a lot of millions of dollars in what his purchase option actually is. And I will say I have not run into one single person who knows what Conrad Vollum's purchase price is. What I have been told by the organization before early on in signing Conrad Vollum is we would not have been able to sign him unless it was to a loan. And so initially, at least with the transfer fee, that would have put him in designated player range. We have no idea what the purchase option is. That it could be assumed it's in DP range, but at that point, if you say, okay, it's a 2 million, if it's a 3 million, if it's a 4 million or more, what really matters is the length of the contract. So Conrad Vollum having a $2 million purchase price doesn't make him a DP. Conrad Vollum having a $3 million purchase price doesn't make him a DP. The length of the contract and how you can spread that purchase price out, that transfer fee out, matters in whether he's a DP or not. So if you sign Conrad Vollum, and this is the other thing too, is that Vollum's quote to Tom Timmerman carries a ton of weight and difference to what I was under the impression of, which is Vollum is not he is not expecting to go back to Slavia Prague. It sounds like they've told him you're not coming back. And that's massive. Like I cannot underscore how huge that is in this conversation, not just because it creates leverage for the other side, but because that basically means that if his loan expires, we could also still negotiate with Slavia Prague. It doesn't necessarily have to be purchase option of the loan. It could be the loan expires and then we do a separate negotiation of saying, all right, we're going to be willing to pay, I don't know, I'll throw out $2.5 million for a 3-year contract. Okay. So, or 2.5 million. And then you sign him to a 3-year contract because it's separate things. You pay the transfer fee and then you negotiate with the player, right? $2.5 million contract, $3 million contract on a 3-year deal. That's $1 million per year. Conrad Vollum's salary is not $900,000. Suddenly, if you pay a transfer fee that averages out over the life of his contract to $1 million or less, he becomes a TAM player. So just because you hear Conrad Vollum might have a purchase price or might have a transfer fee in the $3 to $3.5 to $4 million range, that will not inherently make him a DP. The length of the contract is what makes him the DP when you average that out plus his salary. It's the salary budget charge, which is the amortized transfer fee plus the yearly salary. So there's a lot of nuances in Conrad Vollum here, but it still sounds to me like it is possible for St. Louis City to get him as a TAM level player, which I think we can all agree we'd take him for. We wouldn't take him for a DP. I don't think he approaches that quality of player yet. He's good. He's a jack of all trades. He's really good at a lot of positions. I haven't seen him be awesome at a single position, which is what I need a DP to be. So I just wanted to put that out there about Conrad Vollum, because as we see him play last week over Devin Padelford, that started sparking thoughts in my mind of Totland's in. We know Totland's back next year. That's why he's in. Vollum is still in over Padelford, and Padelford said he doesn't have an option on his. So that's what we're going off of now. So Vollum playing tells me there might be something there. So stay tuned for that, because that's the storyline that I'm absolutely following.
Yep. And the fact that he won't be going back to Slavia Prague is what makes it possible. Because with Klaus, we're kind of like, well, it's a yes or a no, right? And I think even listening to you talk about Vollum's possibilities, I think Klaus has some possibilities as well outside of yes or no. But Amortizing, that sounds like a nice trick, just like a loan is a nice trick, right? A lot other teams have figured this out where if you can get a player on loan, it hits your budget much nicer.
That's right.
Than the alternative. So, I think we need to keep looking for loans. I think if we see volume as a possibility as a TAM player by saying no to his option and then swooping in to buy him on the open market, can he be cheap enough or can we sign him long enough to make it work? That's good. That's really nice. Same with Klaus, like we could say no to his option and then offer him a multi-year contract that is more fairly priced to St. Louis's needs in the future, right? And you've seen that in all sports, right? Like I'll take a pay cut for this year or we'll structure the payments in a certain way. Surely Miami is playing this kind of dark magic. So why can't St. Louis, right? So I do think that option is out there. There's especially, we were joking about this on Discord is like, my God, if we think about TAM and funny money and what Miami's been able to do and maybe LAFC at this point, like surely there's a way, right? We could make this work somehow if we can figure out the dark arts of salary mystery that is MLS. So anyway, just some thoughts to add to that. I think you covered it much better, though. I just wanted to add some fun thoughts to it.
Yeah, I think that was a fun way to end the show.
Agree. I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. That's it from us. Nice long wind down, a nice fun long conversation wind down if you made it this far.
Season's almost over. We have one match left, and then we'll do a fallout, and we'll get a season-ending show next week. Beyond that, the off season is going to be basically as news breaks. We'll be here to cover it.
Ask me for a scarf, and it will happen. Bye, everybody.
Next year, look out for them. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Bye. Okay, I'm out.
All right. Thanks. I'll end the stream. Thanks everybody for joining us. Then staying up late. Appreciate you tuning in on a Wednesday as well. Hopefully this doesn't ruin the rest of your week because usually after us you've got a Friday. So get through the Thursday, get through the Friday, and we'll see all of you at Energizer this weekend. See ya.